space combat.
Yeah. It looks
game.
really. It comes out in like 2 months, I think.
Yeah, they'll have it all over Gen Con. Actually, we're
gonna break a couple things with Mark because there are cards involved, which you just have to get on board with, and it's miniatures and it's competitive. But we're gonna play it.
It's
and you're gonna love it.
They had it at a demo.
Man,
they had it at demo at Gen Con, I believe, this past year. But it was so packed, I never sat down.
They take something that could be great and they just ruin it.
No,
right out of the gate.
Fantasy Flight does these games right.
Yeah,
I was so happy when I heard they got the IP.
And I'm sure they're only going the direction that the market is telling them to go.
Well, that's how you make money.
They didn't consult me.
Well, if you think about it, and this is something that kind of ties into the Star Trek thing. The FASA Star Trek, the original first version of it had Starship combat rules in the actual rules itself. But then when it did its second edition, they took the Starship combat rules out and made it its own separate board game. If Fantasy Flight's going to do that with Star Wars, I think that would be pretty good. If it could translate over. If the role-playing game, this is assuming they're even making a role-playing game.
You know they are.
When Wizards first put out their Star Wars game, the space combat was ludicrous.
Well, yeah, it was theoretical.
You couldn't even picture it in your head.
So yes, I mean that's a major key of it, because that's when people play Star Wars, they want to be an X-wing pilot, or they want to be Han Solo. They want to fight, have starship fights, and
the ships have always been my favorite part of the entire Star Wars universe.
Mine too.
Yeah, for space opera games, you have to have a space combat system. You can't glaze over it.
No.
And I think that's one of the reasons why that initial version of Star Wars, although I liked that when it first came out, but I think looking back, there was this, I don't know, there's almost like this sense of innocence with it, which, I don't know, they were being a little ambitious with it and thinking that this, you're just going to play it because it's Star Wars, we're going to do a theoretical, we don't want to go into hard rules when it comes to spaceship combat and things like that. We want you to kind of play with it, with your imagination and things like that.
I think the guy that was supposed to come up with the ship combat just phoned it in.
This is what I got.
They're called short timers.
He took his advance and bought a bunch of weed, and then
what was the box set? I think it was from the mid '80s, called Star Warriors. It was a Star Wars.
That was West End Games. West End Games had its own fighter combat system for the West End game role playing game, and it tied into the role playing game rather well. The thing that you find,
I always liked that system. I never had a problem.
West End game.
Yeah, the original West End Star Wars.
West End had many financial difficulties, as I recall.
Well, yeah. The thing about West End Star Wars that I liked about it was I liked the fact that it really reined in on dark side stuff.
Yes,
it didn't encourage playing dark side characters.
Well,
at all.
What it did was it made it very appealing, because, like we've talked about before,
it did. I don't remember it that way.
Well, if you were just straight up playing a evil Force user, then you could keep on spending dark side points as Force points, get the same benefit, and then get another dark side point back.
Yeah, you would just accrue dark side points just by virtue of using them.
Right. I think it capped it at technically, if you accumulated, I think 13 dark side points as, say, a Jedi, then you were officially an NPC within the rules.
Yeah, the game master would then take over your character.
Right.
But it made it real easy to slip into the dark side, which I think is in the essence of the fall of Vader and things like that. Whereas in Wizards of the Coast game, it became a little bit more vague, and it was almost like you could atone for things and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
The West End game it seemed to me just a little bit more gritty. The other thing
you had to stay on the straight and narrow, because it's like you could get a dark side point pretty easily.
Yeah, you could, just by doing something out of malice
I know.
or something. But the thing I didn't like about West End game was it was very conducive to power gaming.
It was.
Even more so than
we
revised edition Wizards of the Coast, which is essentially 3.5 D&D.
We power gamed the crap out of that game.
Yeah, because you end up rolling so many dice that you would never fail.
Yeah.
And the what was it called? The wild die?
Yep.
The wild die could, that was like the one different color die you'd roll, and if it rolled a 1, then something bad happened. But you could succeed and have something bad happen, just, power stabilizer broke on your ship or something.
Right. It was like, Yeah, say it's like you're just doing a basic blaster attack. You're shooting a guy, so you would roll your blaster pistol skill, and say you had 5 dice on the skill, so you'd roll 4 regular dice and then your 1 wild die. If the wild die came up a 6 and you passed your roll, then you hit the guy really good. And
it's like critical success,
essentially. And if you failed the roll but we still got a 6, then it's like maybe something interesting would happen. And
like you missed him, but maybe a beam fell off. You shot a beam and it fell off and hit him or something like that. Right. So but the funny thing is that system. It's not that's dice idea is not unique to that system.
No.
Even in sci-fi games, it's not unique.
I remember something else that we used to play that had a wild die.
Has something like that also.
We've never played it.
No, we've never played the Serenity game, but it has that also. It's called it. No, it wasn't the Serenity game. I take that back. It was the Last Unicorn Star Trek game had it. It was called
the one.
The Drama Dice.
Yes.
That's what it was. No, Serenity has the plot points, which is like fate points in Warhammer.
What game were we playing where you had a character named Garanodon? Was that a game we made up?
Yes, that was a game that actually, I think, Mike, you made that one up. It was a homebrew game.
I'm getting the impression Mike doesn't want to talk about this.
No, I brought it up. I want to talk about it. What was it called?
I want to talk about Yanni some more.
What was it called, Mike? What was the game called?
Warp Wars?
Warp Wars. I've been racking my brain all day trying to remember what that was called. We had another game called Space Age. Remember that?
Yeah.
Did we ever make that?
Slightly lamer than Warp Wars. I think Warp Wars was pretty simple. There wasn't anything complicated about it.
It's gone.
Oh, you lost that one?
Mike's nipping this in the bud right now.
Out.
Going through all these different games. Okay, we've played some of them.
I've played a few space opera video games. Like early Blizzard come out with StarCraft. I played that for a while. EVE Online. Played that for a while.
Is very in the niche.
It's a deep game.
Yes. Especially if you're an accountant.
And now the newest thing out is Star Wars Old Republic.
Yeah.
Yes,
so I played all 3 of those.
Right.
I think EVE would be very much like Traveler.
EVE is very, very space opera, I guess, because it's so deep.
Yes, it's massive.
It's about you and your ship, and
we can't talk to Scott from our Monday game without him talking about his ongoing EVE game.
He's been playing EVE for a long time.
He's going to be the last guy, and he's going to control the entire game universe.
Yes, and then he will be happy. But okay, so there are all these different games. That something that we forgot or we just really haven't brought up is the Dark Heresy. Mike mentioned Rogue Trader. That's space opera.
What I was going to actually bring that. I was going to bring that up. I was going to ask if you guys preferred the dark, gritty universe of Warhammer 40K or the antiseptic, pulpy version of Star Trek and Star Wars.
I prefer Star Wars.
It depends, man. I mean, you can only have so much of one before you get tired and crave the other.
The thing about the 40K universe is after a while you're just like, really, can it be more bleak?
I've said it before. This is the game where the good guys are really, really bad people.
Yeah.
I mean, they suck.
Yeah. And that's probably why the game is so popular, because even though you're a good guy, you're doing the Emperor's work. Mike and I are playing on our Monday game. We're doing a Dark Heresy game that Greg is running before the game that Greg is running.
Yes.
He runs 2 games on Monday because he got tired of waiting for everybody to show up. So he decided to run a pregame game. And that pregame game is Dark Heresy. And Mike and I are playing 2 complete scumbags. Mike's playing a scum. I'm playing...
I was going to say, that's what's good about the system, because you can play a scum.
Scum, right. And I'm playing a penal legionnaire. It reminds me a lot of Fafhrd and Grey Mouser in that we really don't care about the mission that we're on. We just kind of just go about and just do bad stuff, but we're doing it in the Emperor's name. So we are the good guys because there are people out there that are worse than we are.
Good is relative.
So going with the dark and gritty versus the more lighthearted. You can't get more lighthearted than running a Star Trek original series game.
Now, I'm going to point out we all know I'm not a Star Trek guy at all, but how bad is it? They have a caste of society that they use as sacrificial lambs, and they wear red shirts.
Right.
These are not good people. Okay.
Did you see the girl in the red shirt?
She is not a sacrificial lamb.
Okay, because I became a Trekkie that day.
Trekker. The proper terminology is Trekker.
Yes, Trekkie is negative, correct?
Yes, it's derogatory.
I guess so.
It is.
Right. Whatever.
According to fanboys, that's what they said.
So,
Fair
but
enough.
anyway.
I'm tracking on Trekkie.
There's a shirt for you.
I'm tracking a Trekkie. So, the games that we've played, I still would like to run Traveler. I think that
I would like you to run Traveler.
It would be an interesting.
I'm all for it. Let's do it.
I'm all for trying different games.
So, but what do you prefer? Which of these specific games? None of us are huge Star Trek people. No. You know, I think
I really like Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. I really like the original series.
Yeah, I enjoy original series. I enjoy Next Generation. Deep Space Nine is my Star Trek. After that,
Voyager
I really don't
was
care.
the shit as far as I'm concerned.
Voyager, well, you got one word right.
But the thing about, all right, if we're going to talk about semantics of the different iterations of the space opera, you know, can you get more just complete disregard? I mean, Lucas disregards other people's work when it comes to his canon when he releases things, but he's done. He's not going to release anything else. So pretty much all the extended universe or expanded universe or however, you know, I think it's expanded universe. That's okay, but Star Trek disregards its own canon from its own previous stuff. You know,
yeah,
that last quality control issue.
that last movie blew everything out of the water,
and I think that lost more fans than anything else.
Yeah. It gained one.
Well, it's because it turned Star Trek into essentially a, you know, blow, zam.
Well,
you know,
this last Star Trek movie added something to the movie that all the other ones lacked, and that was lens flares. But
are we suddenly bagging on that movie? I think we all liked it when we went and saw it.
I like it right now. It was.
I really enjoyed it.
I mean, I've always said I can't watch an episode of Star Trek because I watch 5 minutes and it's boring. In any given 5 minutes of that movie, it's not boring.
So is that your yardstick for good?
He's a closet Michael Bay fan.
I should have. That would have been a good
guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure. Episode. I love all the Transformer movies. Because they're honest. They are what they are.
I don't disagree. I haven't seen the other ones. I only saw the first one, so I couldn't really speak with any authority on it.
I like any space opera game that incorporates the vastness of space, because that to me is an important part of the game.
And I see right now that you wouldn't mind playing Traveler because it's not based, and we've had this discussion before also, it's not based on something else.
Correct.
But it is based on something else. It's all inspired by...
Okay, if you want to play that card, everything is inspired by everything else. Sure. But there's enough separation.
We're talking about direct intellectual property. Yes. You know, not wanting to play Star Trek because, you know, if I said, hey, I'm going to play Star Trek, or I'm going to run Star Trek next week, Dan would be like, I don't want to. You know, but you know,
it's like, don't expect me to like.
Well, then you just come in and say we're just going to play a generic game, and you guys are all in the United Planetary Federation.
And you know that wouldn't mean anything to me. You could totally sell it as long as
window dress it as something else.
You know, if you avoid like the real obvious mainstream things that everybody knows, I would not know.
Nobody tap their chest when they're going to communicate with the bridge. Otherwise, Dan will know what we're doing.
Crap! Am I trapped in Star Trek? Get me out.
I don't know. Just me. Of all the games, sci-fi games we've played, I prefer Star Wars. And I guess I prefer Star Wars.
Yeah, okay. You've played all the different versions of Star Wars. Which of those would you prefer?
I said it earlier. The
West End game?
The West End game. That was my favorite. I know, like you said.
But is it your favorite because it was good, or is it your favorite because you remember those times? There is a difference.
He's exhausting. It really is.
There's a difference.
I enjoyed playing that game. I mean, you know, you could put any version of Star Wars out here right now, and I'd be happy to play whichever one we pull out. I don't care.
Yeah, that's the same character. I could care less.
I really don't really care about the system. It's the universe that I like playing in, because Star Wars, when I was 4.5 years old, was... I don't know, it has such an influence on me as a child, and still to this day, 35 years later, that's my favorite. It'll never cease to be my favorite.
But that's not the question he asked. He said, which edition would you like to play?
I know he did, but I really don't care. I mean, if I had to pick one, I'd pick that just to play it, because we haven't played it in
So as we say,
years.
Setting is more important. You know.
Yeah, than the rule set.
Yes.
And I don't think we've ever played Dune. I'd love to play Dune. I think that'd be awesome.
I own it.
Let's do that.
The only thing worth playing would be a Fremen.
Exactly. I'll make a
We'd all play a bunch of Fremen. We'd hike around the desert, ride on worms, and kill some folks.
I'll make a starter car.
Yeah. See, if I ever ran Dune, it wouldn't be.
anywhere near Arrakis.
No. Well, it would be after Paul had already ascended.
Salusa Secundus. Can we play on Salusa Secundus?
If you want to be on a prison planet, sure.
That's where the starter car come from.
Yes.
Exactly. It'd be like playing Dark Sun.
And we know you love that.
Right.
Start out. Cut off your hands. Wow.
I think that for me, it really doesn't matter what space opera game we play. I prefer Star Wars because,
let's be honest, it has lightsabers.
It has lightsabers. And yeah, I'm glad you said that because I would prefer to run, my favorite era of Star Wars to run is around Episode 1 or before. Anything after that, I have no real interest in running.